My name is Christina Frankopan. I'll be moderating this discussion on CeFi meets DeFi tonight. It's going to be a very lively debate. Just very briefly, for those of you who don't know me, I've spent most of my career in CeFi, advising financial institutions, and now somehow straddle CeFi and DeFi. I'm an advisor to Lazard Financial Advisory on fintech and blockchain, and have been in crypto for a few years now. So what I'd like to start with is just some intros to each of the panelists who introduce themselves and get an initial perspective on how you see CeFi and DeFi currently meeting, particularly from the perspective of your own project, bearing in mind some people in the audience may not know who you are, what you do. So I'll start with you, Lucas, if I may.
Yeah, hi, my name is Lucas, co-founder of CEO of Centrifuge. Centrifuge brings real-world assets to DeFi. What does it mean? Like, we allow people who want to borrow money to borrow stablecoins to use their real assets that exist out there, like real estate, trade finance assets, to use that as collateral and sort of use this novel financial system that we're building. Like, my take on CeFi and DeFi is maybe, I think like traditional finance is like our letters, like fintechs are like maybe fax, and like what we're building here is like email. So like we're sort of like, I think with DeFi building a financial system or like financial infrastructure that is like so different and so far from like what the financial industry can imagine today, that like it's really going to change how CeFi works as a whole.
Great, thank you.
Yes, so Néstor here. I'm the head of the LTM FinTech at Sygnum Bank. Basically, despite my background is in banking and finance, I spent my entire life in crypto since 2016, so most of my professional career. Basically, we kind of like to say that we are a key player in bridging these two worlds of CeFi and DeFi. We are a fully regulated bank. We have a full banking license in Switzerland. We have a team of 150 people. We have over 2 billion in assets. But basically what we try to do is bank the crypto industry. We don't offer any like traditional services, equities, fixed income or anything. We only offer crypto custody, trading and banking for all the companies in the industry. And my take in CeFi versus DeFi, or how to bridge these two worlds, is that basically we cannot build future, like future has heritage also, and we need to think what has been happening in the world for, I don't know, 1,000 years, and how banking was an institution like that enabled money. So yeah, we need to bridge both worlds, but I think we have here a good representation of how we can enable that.
Great, thank you, Stani.
I'm Stani. I'm the founder and CEO of Aave, and Aave is a team that built the Aave protocol, which is on-chain interstate market where you can deposit different kinds of cryptographic assets into the Aave protocol and see these assets growing in their balance. So it's not free money, but you're kind of like lending it out to, or supplying liquidity, and it's borrowed by someone else. And Aave protocol has been very interesting journey for myself. I mean, it's been 2 years now since we launched the version 1, less than 2 years, actually 1.5 years or so, and it has grown to be one of actually the biggest DeFi protocol out there. And what makes it very amazing is that it's also like operating between different chains, so it's not only active in Ethereum, but it's also deployed in Polygon and Avalanche as well. So it's very interesting evolvement. And yeah, Aave itself, we don't see the team as kind of like only DeFi builders. We think that Web3 is bigger than finance, and blockchain is a way to store not only value, but also social capital, which is value in one form, and something that might not be recognized in, for example, your bank accounts, but has a lot of representations to you and to your community. And we want to build more things. And now we're, for example, building a social graph protocol, and somehow DeFi will be linked together with this some magical way. In terms of like how CeFi and DeFi meets, I think one of the best ways, like this is just my opinion, and I'm I'm just saying that maybe that one of the ways to like cross this boat of industries is just throw very good parties, and we're throwing Raaves. I don't know how many of you know what is a Raave. Okay, so we need more CeFi people there then. Yeah, so I think like having like events like this and also kind of like places where we can hang and explore each other's ideas and just get introduced to the Web3 culture is a way to onboard, in my opinion, because that's the way we all, in our like personal capacity, can understand what we're building here, and then we can transport that into our professional capacity, whoever you are and what you do in traditional finance, for example. And I think this could be one bridging point, and it's quite. And also, it's fun to throw parties. I love to do that. So, yeah, that's all.
So yeah, my name is Julien BOUTELOUP. So I'm the founder of Stake Capital. We've been in the space for quite some times, and we're doing arbitrage, market maker, investment in a few different, like in DeFi mostly. And we started as a staking as a service, and now we're doing like a bunch of, like we did the first flash loan, we've been doing like liquidation in the space, and now going into cross layers. I'm also involved in KULECHOV Finance, which is I think it's like maybe the biggest DeFi protocol. I think we're the biggest. Okay.
There we go.
And,
gloves off.
It's an auto market maker for mostly like start as a stable coins, but now we putting into more assets. I'm also like involved in Rect.news, which is like underground investigation, like type of dark community that we write about whatever happens in the DeFi space. Who knows about Rect? That's good. It's actually more famous than Wave.
People want to know who gets wrecked.
Okay, I see. And then the other one
Everyone who goes to rave gets wrecked.
Exactly. And then the other one is Blackpool. Blackpool is a current hedge fund focused on NFTs, and we're the leader in Sorare, the fantasy football game. We're also like not too bad on Axie. We have a bunch of different scholars. We also have an academy. We also have a podcast. Yeah, so, and then StakeDAO, which is the decentralized exchange, where we build strategies. You have access to trading, options, futures, and what we're trying to do there is trying to build a system where CeFi guys or people that don't understand DeFi can actually get into DeFi, but with the easiness of using a centralized exchange, just as Binance or all those guys that have been spending millions in the UX and the UI, but we try to make it easy for people in a trustless and non-custodial way. So that's StakeDAO. And I believe the way that, for me, like how CeFi and DeFi are going to merge, I really believe it's going to be using like those big social applications, such as, I already mentioned it yesterday, but for example, like Facebook announced yesterday that they will support crypto, like natively, like really big into crypto, and then they're using Coinbase as their partner. So like TikTok, Facebook, all those big applications that we don't necessarily like them in the DeFi space, I think this is where we're gonna see a lot of users coming from. Yeah.
Great, fantastic introduction. Thank you, guys. Lots of topics to delve into. Just on the human aspect, something Stani brought up, culturally speaking, I'm going to do audience participation briefly. How many of you culturally identify as CeFi? Okay, for the purpose of the webcast, that's 0. How many of you identify as DeFi? And how many of you consider yourself hybrid? I consider myself hybrid. Okay, so I think we're about 80%, you're the math mode, Julien, we're 85% DeFi and 15% hybrid, but we're not strongly represented by CeFi, which I think in itself is revealing, and I think speaks to Stani.
You're the CeFi person.
I'll take it as a
So
compliment.
it's like 50-50.
I think she's closet DeFi.
Yeah, it's not. I'm not in the closet about it. But no, and I may think there's a couple of things I'd like us to drill down onto now. So first of all, I think we need to do some definitions. Because when people talk about CeFi, they mean different things. You say CeFi, you mean traditional finance. When we say CeFi, do we mean centralization from a technical point of view, from custodial point of view? There are some sort of hybrids. Is Binance Smart Chain DeFi or CeFi, or is it something in between? It would be recognized by TradFi as DeFi, but not necessarily from the heart of the DeFi community. So how do we define what CeFi really means, and what are we really talking? Is it a cultural difference, or is it actually a technical difference, or are we just talking about pools of capital that are coming from traditional quarters? Who wants to start with that? Stani, I can see you do.
Well, yeah, I think like DeFi means different things to different regions here. Like, for example, for me, there's different components. Like I exactly like want DeFi to have when I'm interacting with it. So I mean, one of the important things is kind of like that you pretty much like own your keys. So the same way as you have like, let's say, Bitcoin transactions, there is no centralized entity there if you control your keys, and you can control where you transfer your funds on chain. And I think that's important in DeFi is that you actually are accessing directly to these protocols with your keys and pretty much permissionless fashion. So let's say if I would today deposit into the Aave protocol, supply liquidity, I have the same opportunity as anyone else around globally to do that. And that's kind of like also like a value thing for me when it comes to decentralized finance. So it doesn't discriminate or look at your kind of like background too much. But also what is important is that the technology is transparent. So if you all go today and look all the exposures of the protocols, they're available to you. The code bases are available. Pretty much like how much value there is in the Aave protocol, in Curve protocol, how the code is built, what kind of functions you can call, and what will be the execution and outcome. And because of this kind of like nature, we have a financial ecosystem that looks like aquarium, and aquarium where you have like the fishes, and you can see pretty much everything there. And in terms of like CeFi and like TradFi, you have a different system where we're used to like this kind of like a black boxes. So we like black boxes with a small hole where you can actually like put your money in, and you don't know what will happen, and you get yield. So this is how like, let's say, Nexo, Celsius, and all those CeFi things work. And pretty much like how DeFi works is it's a aquarium. It has the same hole, but you see exactly what will happen when you put the funds into the box, and how it evolves there, and what will be the outcome before you go into that transaction. So this transparency, and because of this transparency, we can actually create even better risk mitigation tools, and something that we might not have back in 2018 and the last crisis, where, for example, different banks didn't necessarily know directly what's the exposure to each other, and in overall, you couldn't see the exposure for the whole economy. And DeFi is exposed this way 24/7, auditable by anyone. Regulator could look at it. Anyone who is building risk mitigation tools can look at it, and the people as well. There are still challenges, for example, like what the code exactly means, and especially if you're not a technical person, and and who you can trust. But essentially, like there are behind of each protocol, there is a community that forms a consensus, like how the protocol works and what is their objectives, and guides how the future of that protocol will evolve. So I guess like for me are like the transparency aspect, permissionless nature, and community ownership. So people own these protocols, and as a user, as you're using more and more the protocol, you become owner. And this is also kind of like economical change compared to traditional finance, where you sell products, services against data and consumption, And here the users and the communities are deciding about their finances, their financial systems, and how much risk they want to take. And I think it's overall a very beautiful system.
Yeah, agree. Néstor, how would you define CeFi versus DeFi?
I think Stani tackled it quite well. I would say that DeFi is any financial component that is built on top of a public blockchain, while CeFi is any like private blockchain or simply a database. So this example that the Stani gave of big black boxes are basically private databases where you don't know what is built on top of what, on top of what, on top of what, and then resolved again. Well, with DeFi, we can, as you mentioned, definitely see what are the flows that are coming into Aave, into stake pool, and everywhere. So that's the beauty of this game, that we have this big playground where we can build one component on top of each other without becoming these big black boxes, but becoming like continuing with this transparency layer that is the ethos of the space in the end.
Yeah, makes sense. Lucas?
I think, I mean, one important idea around DeFi that sort of comes with the transparency is that code doesn't discriminate. Like, it doesn't care about the transaction size, but we have the scalability issues, and so like layer 1 Ethereum, it's becoming a place where you can only do this with like hundreds of thousands of dollars now of value, but still like the idea that like Aave does not care about whether you have $1,000 position or $10 million position in liquidity or in borrowing, like that I think is sort of a big change in how like the traditional financial world works, because like almost always there is a human element in there that ultimately will cost and like will favor large transactions over small ones. And the other thing that is crucial about transparency is, and it's maybe a consequence of how DeFi is built, is like liquidity is moving so quickly from one place to another. Like the idea that you can have like a flash loan and within like a single transaction move around like basically like to like tune of billions in like dollars that you would like take hours and like or maybe weeks of legal contracts and like then like still be settled days later off chain in the traditional world, like that can be done by like simple code, is I think what differentiates like and what is like going to be different to how like traditional CeFi banks or like institutions will work and sort of are built at the core.
Yep. Julien, so billions of dollars of flash loans can be done in ways that we couldn't do before, right?
Yeah, well, before it was done by the big institutions like big hedge fund, big VCs, and now it's only, and I think that's what makes the difference for me between DeFi and CeFi is DeFi is accessible by everyone, by anyone, and anyone can build on top of it, compared to traditional finance where you have to get a KYC, you have to get AML, or you have to build a company in order to access products. But those products that we build in DeFi, they are not new. They're just a copy from traditional finance, what traditional finance has been building for decades. We basically copy the exact same products, but with a different technology, on a different new protocol, and anyone can access it worldwide. There's no borders, there is no discrimination. And yes, like anyone from like can get a keyboard and start building the next $1 billion US company protocol run by the community. And I think it's like being in the 80s, maybe like what they experienced back then, where the traditional finance got into this new way of financial society. Well, now we're doing this, but on a scale of order of magnitude, like 100 or 200. And this is fascinating because anyone can participate to it. This is what makes the difference between DeFi and CeFi for me. Because traditional finance had all the products that we're building right now, like lending, market makers, all those different things. We're making them better because the technology that we have access to, blockchain, is way easier to use, way faster and cheaper sometimes. than the products that we add in traditional finance. It was make the beauty and the big difference. It's like it's accessible by all and usable by all.
Yeah, that's great. So what I'm getting from this is the consensus is that the distinction between DeFi and CeFi is the permissionless nature of interacting with and innovating on these platforms and with the protocols or building the protocols themselves, and the transparency that comes with that, rather than necessarily particularly where the capital pools are coming from. And part of that is replicating or improving on existing products in a democratizing way, but part of that is just creating new kinds of products we couldn't before, right? I'd like to stay actually with this point about the retail versus institutional, which is a slightly different distinction between CeFi and DeFi. I'll stay with you, Julien, partly because of your staked out platform. You know, there's been a wave of democratization, perhaps not the word, but a wave of retail interest in investment platforms, Robinhood, Wall Street Bets, particularly over the last year or two. And so I think, you know, that there is a transition in the broader sense about retail being interested in investment products in a way that they haven't before. And it's interesting for me to see platforms that are easy to use, have easy interfaces, but at the back end are delivering nonetheless these cultural and technical aspects that we've just discussed. Is that how you see it? And is that the kind of platform that you're looking to be building through your various enterprises?
Yeah, definitely. I think that's what we also like involve in, like a mobile app, like different things that we're working on. But I think the reason why users are like using Robinhood or any investment apps is because it's actually super simple to use. And they don't need to understand how the technology works behind the scene. They just deposit some money, and then it's fully automated. So, and they don't need to care about having a Web3 wallet, understanding keys. I like the statement, like, not your keys, not your money, but you can still not own your keys, like have solution behind the scene. For example, banking system might actually change and move into custodial solutions for their clients where there's a legal framework. Or we can have like fragmented keys, like using like AWS, HSM, cloud, and all different things. So it's not about owning your keys. It's just about like making sure that you can retrieve your keys at the time you want. Because then you can make all those different systems super easy to use. And what we tried in StackDAO or other application that we've been building is you just get to the platform. Ideally, you don't understand that this platform is being run by blockchain or there is any concept of cryptos, and then you can just deposit some capital, and then we make all the different strategy super easy for you to use, and then will work by himself. And this is what is very important. I think, and I mentioned it yesterday as well, is like the reason why we're using internet is not because we all understand HTTP, it's because we have to use it, and it's super easy to use. And I think we'll reach that momentum of having all those retail people coming into our own application that are competing with Robinhood. Of course, if we show like 300% APY, like they're a little bit scared, you know. So what we've been doing is like, we've been asking questions, like making a survey. We say, okay, we give you 45% APY on a stablecoin on euro, or we give you 5%. And most of them take the 5%. Because the 45%, they think this is a scam, and this is dangerous, and they're gonna get wrecked. So I think it's like just trying to make things super easy, usable, like super simple tool, no concept of wallets, no concept of keys. I'm talking for the most of retail users, not like for the like us, like Degens. And then yeah, they will just migrate and use our technology, 100% sure.
Yeah, Néstor, I mean, from your perspective, what type of clients are you serving, and how do you see the hybrid solution that you can deliver to enable this kind of vision?
I mean, the cool idea behind Signum is that most of the founders don't come really from the finance world. Our CEO never worked in banking, and basically we tend to take advantage of the best of the traditional world, basically to put it to work with DeFi basically. So in our advisory board we have people that spend 10 years in the industry, the CEO of UBS and so on, but we also have the founder of Kyber and people that come directly from the crypto industry. So as I said, I mean, we see that that DeFi is building many components that come from traditional finance, like a perpetual feature is a CFD in the end. But with this layer of, well, composability and money Legos that we can take advantage of to provide services to clients. So, for example, we are, as I said, a full bank. We open fiat accounts for clients. And our founders thought that this was a needed layer to enable the institutionalization of the industry. And, well, this bridge between traditional finance and DeFi was missing the off-ramp, on-ramp layer. And for that, the only way to go is having a banking license, but then connecting that with DeFi. So offering access to Aave to the clients, offering access to a staking and so on directly through with the security of having a banking behind.
Mm-hmm. And Luke is saying on this idea of kind of democratizing and in a way it's about product development and finding ways for people to access, in your case, real assets on chain, and providing access to, say, opportunities that normal people wouldn't have otherwise had access to. Do you see Centrifuge as part of that process, or?
So far, most of the conversation has been around the people that want to invest or participate. What Centrifuge is doing, we're doing the opposite of, like, we're helping people get value or money out of crypto and then use it to solve their career choices, they're like growing their businesses, like building a house, right? And by that also, like, we're diversifying DeFi and actually like reducing risk significantly, because, well, like crypto is extremely correlated, and like you can only make 200% yield as long as we're in a crazy bull market, and that'll go away at some point, maybe not, but then, like, sort of the idea of, okay, now we bring like the trillions in assets that are around us and let them use the system. So we're a technology provider because all of this technology is extremely hard, and we're trying to build these products that allow traditional lenders to use DeFi as their backend, and that's and there is always a bit of centralization in, like, the point where you go into the real world. That is, like, legally just simply we're, I think, maybe a decade away from changing that. Maybe we're 2 decades away, 3 decades in some countries. Maybe some will never actually get there. Though I do believe that the ones that will get there will have significant advantage. And so we're sort of like bridging this gap and like helping to bring all of this information on chain so that actually DeFi protocols can act on information about commodities in the real world or information about property that exists. And so that's sort of the where we come from and how we look at that problem. And I mean, really what this means today in practice is, like, 2 years ago, one of my main concerns and things that I spent significant time on was, like, trying to figure out how people get DAI stablecoin and turn it into US dollars without losing 1% in that chain of going from market maker A or like prop trading firm to, like, different stablecoin to exchange to bank account, like waiting 2 weeks to get it deposited, right? Like, this is like, I think now, like 2 years later, that problem is something that I would largely consider solved. We still have the issue, and I really like Signum saying, okay, we want to bank crypto projects, because how many DeFi people in here have issues getting bank accounts? Like, probably a lot, right? Because, like, it is like something that's very scary and maybe threatening to these banks, and so, like, that's sort of that's another bridge we need to build. And from there, like, sort of once we have that, then these real assets, like, just get the same kind of benefits, the same kind of liquidity, like all we talked about, that we have today for crazy crypto governance tokens and like NFTs and whatnot.
Yeah. I mean, just in terms of where the institutional interest is, or where the sort of incoming interest from this CeFi world is coming, and it's sort of, the way I see it, they're kind of pouring over it like it's a petri dish and trying to work out what's going on. And to be fair, it's difficult to know. Stani, it would be really interesting to hear about Aave's plans and you know, how you see that developing and how one can actually tangibly sit down with financial institutions from TradFi or CeFi and see how we can, A, educate them, and B, actually deliver solutions to them that suit the parameters that they need.
Yeah, I think I see most of the activity like from like traditional financial institutions happening like from personal capacity, like out of curiosity, people come into the space and try to figure out like what's going on, what is the market that is growing. By the way, like today I look into DeFi Pulse and it's 100 billion in locked value in DeFi, so it's kind of like pretty cool achievement. I know the DeFi Llama has probably more, they're better trackers, but the thing is like it's very small industry end of the day, right? We're not that big. But it's growing like exponentially, and that raises a lot of curiosity besides of the kind of like yield opportunities, but also like the innovation that is happening and how these protocols are governed by these communities. And recently, I think like last year, we've been talking more and more with institutions. We've been talking to regulators, central banks, and mainly like institutions that actually want to participate one way or another, but maybe don't have the same kind of like a risk appetite to participate in DeFi. And it's not that DeFi is for some way less safer. I mean, it's a very interesting opportunity, especially protocols that are running from year after another and becoming very safe, audited multiple times. It's kind of like some of these protocols, they have a very, very well engineered technically and financially models that are just working very well. And what's cool now is that these institutions, they want to come in, but not necessarily have the clarity of actually like what standpoint they should take, and they actually go into, you know, select a protocol and just ape in, or what is the stance. And for that, there's two kind of things. There's the unclarity, like legal uncertainty and the risk appetite, and then the key is how the key management happens in a larger organization, like a fund. And we have kind of like thought about this problem, and we decided to create like a separate protocol, the Aave Arc market protocol, which is essentially just a protocol that is separated from the main Aave protocol that we have. And it has this whitelisting functionality where these whitelisters, which can be custodians, they can be banks, they can be any kind of like institution that has clients, and they can manage onboarding process. And they can onboard the suppliers, they can onboard the borrowers and liquidators as well. Essentially creating kind of like a sandbox for institutions that don't necessarily have the appetite yet, but the curiosity to participate in decentralized finance. And this market has taken quite a lot of traction in terms of like interest, and it's going to be launched in the next few weeks. And the whole initiative has been led by Fireblocks, which is pretty much offering institutional services, and they're expanding the product to their clients. And they basically are using the separate market, and they forked the Aave user interface and kind of like in a decentralized fashion created the whole thing, which is very cool. Like, this is what DeFi is. You as a team don't need to build everything. You can always rely that there's community developers or other people that actually want to contribute and build the ecosystem. And for us, what we are expecting is that maybe this demonstrates a bit like DeFi's abilities for institutional usage in terms of the markets. They see the transparency, they see how these markets operate, and at some point they will be more comfortable in actually using the permissionless DeFi, which is something that is the foundation of DeFi. It's kind of like a playground for institutions, and we'll see how it goes. But that's our approach. There are other approaches. We still work hard on actually when we get inquiries and we educate institutions that, you know, this is DeFi, this is the future of France, and yeah, okay. And
I didn't pay him to say that.
I pay later.
Yeah, okay.
So yeah, and I think that's kind of our thesis. We want everything to be permissionless, but we also want to do trials and see how things go and find ways to onboard. And if you can get more people, whether it's the ARC market or whether it's Aave, and get more traditional financial folks, we're excited to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I'd actually like us to just dig in a little bit onto the NFT things. That's really interesting what your plans are. And Julien, I'd like your perspective on this too. Is, again, something from the CeFi space that just looks a bit spacey. And, you know, beyond the idea of art and digital art, I think the ways that one can combine financial aspects of not just trading and owning these assets, but for other types of permissioned or permissionless financial products, I think is really interesting, and there's lots of innovation happening in that space. Aave, big fan, for example. But, you know, I wonder if, and it's also from the point of view of sort of headlines from the CeFi world, something that's very visible to people. So how do you see that evolving in DeFi, and how would we help bridge that understanding again back to CeFi?
Well, the NFT market.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, I think like what's happening in the NFT market currently is exactly what happened to the ICO phase, when there was this massive 99%, like a lot of people building many different projects, but not really looking into like what those kind of projects will do. For example, there was this phase, like the race to the most beautiful landing page, and then you could raise millions, like literally like millions. Well, now, like after a year of craziness in the NFT market, I think now this is the phase of building. Well, normally after the phase of 2017, then there was a crash. Like, there's no crash on this one. But right now, like now, people are actually looking into building true, real utility in those NFTs. And this is very fascinating in a way that still like you could do, like in traditional finance, you have like different assets, you have real estate, you have like bonds and all different things. Well, now what we're doing is like trying to replicate using those kind of like NFT that we present and cannot be normally fractionalized. I mean, now you can do it, but you can actually unlock different features. We saw one of the biggest one that people didn't really notice, but it was built, I think it was the first biggest example of utility in this space of using NFTs, was with the Curve finance protocol, when you were doing massive swap using synthetics, so the virtual debt of synthetics. Well, you were actually printing an NFT that that indirectly, without saying it, you will claim after couple of minutes, because it needed 6 minutes or 8 minutes, like roughly like 10 minutes to resolve. So you add this NFT that represent $100 million virtually swapped. And this was actually the first use case of really like using NFT in the utility market. And now what we're seeing is like having those NFTs. For example, like in StakeDAO, we have those NFTs called like Tamiel, Pitya, and all the different things. Well, we built an arbitrage strategy on Avalanche, because it's fast, and it's quite, you can like make a lot of profits. And then so this arbitrage strategy, we made it only accessible for the people that had certain NFTs. And you have like 3 categories of NFTs, like common, unique, and rare and unique. And those one give you access to a maximum capacity of deposit inside the vault. So it's like building extra layers on top of existing DeFi products. In order, you could think of like joining because those strategies, they have a maximum cap. You cannot have, for example, you cannot have more than $10 million inside this vault. Why? Because otherwise we cannot guarantee the APY on the other side, because you cannot control how much arbitrage it will do. You can just like like calculate in the future. So we said, okay, we have a maximum cap, and then only people can enter those strategies. And what we use is the NFT concept. So this utility is actually plugged in, and then you limit the amount of deposit inside the strategy. This could be applied to Aave, like for example, if there is like in the ARC, like maximum cap, you need specific NFTs to join, and then you can deposit specific amount depending on the NFT that you have. And we're seeing that across the entire ecosystem. Like now, people build like crypto pairs, like different things. But now you can actually start using them across different layers. And I'm looking forward to see what Aave is cooking on the NFT side. But I think this market could potentially be as big as the ERC20, like all the different assets, because it's huge. And as soon as you get Centrifuge, like tokenizing my flat or whatever, we'll pump a little bit, not much the market cap. But, and then this is like this is enormous, because you have like assets like ERC20 tokens, and then you have NFTs, and you can combine them and then build the next generation. This is actually like, because what we've been building, it looks a little bit similar to traditional financial products, but with these new concepts combined together, I think we can really think outside the box and build like new products that we've never seen before.
Yeah, no, I think that's very interesting, especially for capacity-constrained strategies or whatever. You can have clubs, there can be social capital, and this moves around in new kinds of ways. I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Lucas, since he was talking about his flat.
I mean,
Oh, you don't
like,
want it? You want my flat?
I want. I'll take your flat.
Okay.
I'll give you 150% LTV.
Here we're talking.
I mean, the NFT space is interesting. We've been building, like, we've deployed the first NFT contract to Ethereum in 2018. 2019 is when we sort of started like playing around with it. And we, like Centrifuge for a large part was actually like trying to figure out how we bring liquidity into NFTs. And what we ended up building sort of over the last few years is like a way to create liquidity, and like the traditional financial instrument we have for this is called securitization. So you put a bunch of different assets into a pool, and you issue a security against it, and that's the ERC20 token. And that's like one, and we're sort of like interested in this from like a financing, trade finance, financing like real estate, apartments. And so for that we did start building this infrastructure. I think that's like one core. There's now like, I think we're at a point where we have, similar to like 2017, we have these like ICO crypto native assets. In NFT space, we also have these crypto native assets, art, virtual goods. But then we're seeing this already like, well, like Centrifuge's real world assets, every single loan is an NFT. And the idea is in the future that, well, of course, not just the pool, the LP shares in the pool, the sort of the tokens that you can buy to earn interest on this loan portfolio, but also even the individual loans at some point become like useful outside of a pool. And you can like take your apartment and you can go to like different pools and ask like which one's going to give you the best deal. And like this is another piece of like infrastructure in the NFT world. Like we're sort of like seeing like real world assets and like crypto native NFTs like sort of coming and at some point probably merging. Like membership, like gaming items, like software licenses, concert tickets. There's like, this is like getting closer and closer together. And I think that's going to be cool, right? Like I would love to have an NFT that represents like some sort of like ownership in like revenue from a cool project that I like. Or like a co-op share.
You can buy football players.
Yeah.
I've got Mbappe. I would like to.
Or just one left foot of a football player if you fractionalize him.
Yeah.
No, really interesting. There's just one topic I'd like to just touch on very quickly, and then wrap up because we're running out of time. So I've intentionally not gone too far towards the sort of what actually is the regulatory perimeter and how is that shifting and where is that going to end up, because it's just too big a topic. But there is, there's an increasing acceleration of interest from the public sector, if you like, on the development of stablecoin CBDCs. How is that going to impact DeFi? Because, if you like, central banks come from CeFi too. How is that going to impact the ecosystem, and in particular, stablecoin, the use of stablecoins in DeFi, which are heavily and actively used in all your projects? I'll start with you, Néstor, and just a very quick shot from everyone, then we'll wrap it up.
Yep, I mean, you can imagine that our interaction with the regulator is quite fluid, so to say, by being a fully regulated bank, and as said, was for us a priority to become fully regulated. But we also believe, and I think it's really cool of the space, that all the projects want to educate kind of the institutional players, like what the stake pool is doing, and all of the projects are basically educating the regulator on what all these components in the industry mean. What is DeFi, what is lending, what is securitization, etc. Basically, our role as a bank is interacting with the regulator in educating them as well on what we want to do, what we want to offer to our clients. And when they see that they are forced to take a decision, basically, when we tell them, look, we want to integrate with Aave permissionless and allow our clients to tap into DeFi and get these yields, they need to take a decision on that. And then they are faced with how to interact with that. I mean, CBDCs is obviously, when they start hearing about DeFi, crypto, and so on, and again, they need to take a decision and take a stand in the technology. CBDCs probably is the easiest way to confront this, in the sense that, okay, if I want to control the flows that come into here, or add a layer of security on top of the currency that is, in the end, the base layer of the industry, so stable coins and so on, CBDCs will be the easy way to approach it. I personally think that we haven't yet seen the final stablecoin that will cop the market, kind of, because in the end, most of the stablecoins that we use day to day are mostly centralized from one point or the other. There are really cool projects, and we have a few people here from Angle and some other cool projects coming up with ideas around how to make stablecoins really decentralized, but still to be seen. Yeah.
I think we're going to have to wrap up so that we can get time for questions. Very briefly, can CeFi and DeFi live happily together? Julien, is it going to be a happy marriage?
Yeah, if CeFi dies, yeah. That's it.
Stani?
Yeah, I think it's all finance end of the day. Like, and DeFi is like software. It's better, and maybe like the CeFi culture becomes DeFi. That like the culture will eat CeFi and make it more happier. I think that's my thesis.
Okay.
I mean, I think it has to. There's a dystopical future in which we think that we are gonna all use. Interact with our wallets all the time, but in the end, as I said at the beginning, future finance and future France is built with heritage at the end of the day, and we need to, as I said, take what the best that we saw in the traditional finance world, not these black boxes, but the products that we like and that we use every day, and bring into DeFi with transparency in a permissionless manner and allowing everyone to tap into proper finance.
Lucas?
I think CeFi will become a front end for DeFi. I think that's already...
That's meta, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, it's already happening. Like, Nexo is a CeFi lender where you can borrow and lend crypto. They're already one of the largest maker vault operators, right? So they themselves use DeFi because it's, for them, an easy way to get liquidity. Like, banks are really looking for any ways that they can get any of the yield in DeFi. Today, it's hard for them for regulatory reasons, but like, so in the end, I mean, your bank is a user interface for your money already today. It'll probably, hopefully, be a user interface for DeFi in the future, and be reduced to that as much as possible.
Great. Okay. So, and we might need some marriage guidance counselling between the two sides.
Yeah.
And going. I think we've got a few seconds for questions. Right? Any questions?
So if we take the example of, I don't know if you can hear me well, but
Yep.
if you take the example of your apartment that you use as a collateral, for example, for your loan stable coins, and then you deposit it to your protocol like Aave or whatever. The problem is we've seen a lot of hacks which are then recapitulated by Rect in many languages now. But the problem is, how would you convince, so one of the solutions is in insurance. So what would be the argument that you would use within insurance to insure your protocol against all of these hacks?
Well, in case of Aave, we have this called safety module. So the insurance is kind of built in the sense that if there is some sort of like issue in the protocol, it might be like failed liquidation, or it might be some sort of a hack. That safety module, which is pretty much like the community members coming in and depositing Aave and earning yield for the sake of transferring the risk to themselves. That kind of covers it. But in terms of like NFTs as a collateral, like NFT it can be anything. It can be actually even a liquid representation of a liquid, let's say a flat in London, for example, where properties are just traded frequently all the time, even very like a paper-based way. Maybe Julien's flat might be very liquid as well. So
Well, I was last night. Yeah, trust me.
It will be if Lucas. Great. Any other questions? Don't be shy.
So you all very eloquently described why we love the permissionless, trustless, open source nature of DeFi. But on the note of transparency, I think a lot of us are also proponents of privacy. And so I'm wondering, how can we rectify this dissonance between the addition of privacy and the loss of transparency? Because you described how, we need transparency to improve upon the old system.
Yeah.
It's a personal passion of mine, I think, privacy and sort of like figuring out what it means for DeFi. I think we will get there. Definitely the lack of privacy we have today is actually extremely dangerous, and the only reason we can do it is because, well, I don't want to, like, maybe a bit extremely worded, it's play money. If you're like personal finances and like your ability to get money from a bank like actually depended on whether you had a good on-chain credit behavior, and like suddenly everything was public and Facebook started, or like Google started charging you differently if you had more money in your wallet than if you didn't. I mean, they already try to do that, right? Like they just don't have access. Well, Google is trying to get access to your bank account, but like that's like the horror scenarios that we think about with lack of privacy in finance. And yeah, like today DeFi doesn't have that, and the trade-off of transparency over privacy is like a trade-off we have to do. But with like zero knowledge proofs, like a lot of the off-chain like privacy stuff that is being developed in currently and is starting to become usable, you can actually go from having still the same guarantees around liquidity, or like sort of monitoring the like state of risk or of what DeFi is, but you can give individual transparency to the individual users, and I think that's where we'll get to. But it is a big problem that I think not enough people are working on yet. But we have to solve it.
Yeah, I do believe that if we don't bring privacy as soon as possible, then whatever we're building will die, because then CeFi will be able to kill it. And I don't think like transparency and privacy are two different like opposite concept. They actually work together. The more transparency you have with good privacy, it's actually stronger. And what China is building, and that's funny because before you said stablecoin will accelerate the adoption of DeFi. Well, what we're seeing is China is about, I think they have their own agenda, but they are trying to release their own digital currency, and now they're trying to stop DeFi over there because they want to control the market, and then release their own DeFi products, I'm sure. And then what they're doing with the credit score and all this concept of privacy, I think that using blockchain over there, or using crypto over there, it will be worse than using traditional financial products. And yeah, in order for us to succeed in this space, like as an ecosystem in DeFi, we have to bring privacy. Then people won't be able to stop it. You will still have transparency of all the transaction going on, but we need to have multiple different accounts per users, like kind of like avatars. And then we want to go to the gym, we use a specific avatar that will just answer a question. Is this person real? Is this person not like into some wrong businesses? So this is what important, like building multiple different, it's like having multiple different wallets as identities, and you can use them for different use cases.
Great. I think we need to wrap up because I think everyone needs a drink. Julien, Stani, Néstor, Lucas, thank you so much for the discussion, and look forward to drinking downstairs.
Thank you.
Good, guys.
Oh.